everyone, thanks for coming to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Torryn and welcome. I am a bullet journal artist, but today I am exploring in my sketchbook. I normally do a painting or watercolor of a landscape that I'm inspired by from the country of the month that I'm working on. But this time I really felt like doing some more portraiture, and I love portraits. I've been doing them a long time and I just enjoy them the most. I love drawing people's faces. So when I was researching my South Korea for my bullet journal this month, K-pop is such a huge topic when you're talking about Korea. So I found a couple of bands that really stuck out to me during my research, and they kept popping up. One of them was BTS, which I put in my weeklies last week in my bullet journal. And when I was drawing them, I really wanted to show the other side of the hugely popular South Korean band, which is called BLACKPINK. Now, I hadn't really heard much of them before doing this setup, but when I started researching, their name just kept popping up, and then suddenly I'm driving in the car on the way home from work today. First I hear BTS, and then the next song is BLACKPINK. So I'm really glad I chose to do this week. It's just bizarre how suddenly when you don't hear of something and then you hear it once and suddenly it's thrown at you everywhere. I hope I'm not alone in thinking that. Do you ever find that? I just feel like this has happened so much lately, especially with BTS and BLACKPINK. So I'm really glad that I could do a portrait of these girls. They're all beautiful, and I've decided to sketch them together on one page in my sketchbook. I'm not focusing on one individual because from what I gather, this is a band or a group that, there's not one leader. It's kind of like they're all given equal share, which is what I love about groups in general, actually. They're sort of like distributed. Like there's not one that takes over. They're all quite even, which is nice. So to start with this portrait, I mapped out where my ladies were going, and I do this using like a grid system where I mark up my picture that I'm working from, mark up my page, and then roughly sketch in where the features and the face shapes are. So I'm just getting out the general form of all the portraits, and then I'll work with the detail after that. Now, normally I will do these in pencil or even paint, but I've been working a lot in pen in my bullet journal lately, and I've been really enjoying it. So I wanted to keep with that shading in the cross-hatching way and just a very simple pen, pick up a pen and try and do your best to make a portrait sort of thing. Because also I find in a sketchbook, I don't want to do too much of finished paintings. I really want it to be exploring new media and just exploring different techniques. So I'm trying to keep with that in my sketchbook, and this is something that I haven't done a lot of in proper pieces of artwork. I've done it a lot in my bullet journal, but not so much in like a finished sketch. So a brief little history about these four girls. Won't go into too much detail because I really don't know that much. But there's four members: Lisa, Jennie, Rose, and Jisoo, and they all basically started in auditioning for this company called YG Entertainment. And I'd never really heard of YG Entertainment, but it's a massive, kind of like a talent agency and a record label. They do all sorts of things. And it sounds like they were trainees at the company first, and then they were sort of put into this group called BLACKPINK. It made me think a bit of like how the Spice Girls came about, like they didn't know each other, yet they end up auditioning for a group, and then they end up spending, the next decade together in their life. So it's interesting to think that that still is going on, and especially in Korean pop. So I don't think any of them knew each other beforehand. And we've got two that grew up in sort of New Zealand and a little bit in Australia, which I found very interesting. So that was Rose, that actually grew up a lot in Melbourne. So although they've all got Korean ancestry and heritage from Korea, they're actually kind of from all over the shop. So I found that really interesting. And now I'll just give you a little bit of a brief rundown of how I'm actually sketching them out, in case you're not here for the very in-depth look into their background that I just gave you, and you're here more for the art. So if you're here for the art and you wanted some tips on how I'm doing this, I'll just tell you roughly how I go about doing it, because it's quite an easy technique to grasp if you haven't tried it before. So really you're just going to go with wherever there's light tones, you want to really scale back on the strokes. You want to give a bit of space between your strokes, and the line work can be very light and faint. And then as you're building up towards those darker contrasts and shadows, just add more strokes into it. And then when you want really dark ones, you can overlay, crisscross, and yeah, make them really tight. And there's no rhyme or reason. I just go with whichever feels right at the time, like follow the strokes in where the shadows would be placed. But yeah, there's really easy technique to grasp, and if you haven't tried it before, I definitely recommend giving it a go. So just do lots of strokes, and to make it darker, add another layer that's kind of crossing over the top. Really cool effect. And I love that this drawing had so many different textures to work with, like the fabrics and the hairs, and then the jewelry. There was all this kind of options that I could play with. I really enjoyed just having that one tool to work with and just seeing what you can come up with. So this is the final piece. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't blab too much, or if I did, I just hope that you learnt something or you were entertained by it. Let me know if you like this kind of drawing style in my sketchbook, or whether you want to go, whether you want to see more watercolor next time or painting. I'm happy to oblige. Yeah, I enjoyed it and I hope you did too. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Cheers guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.